We hear a lot about processed foods and the negative effects on our health, but the reality is most of us eat them. I eat them. I'm a registered dietitian. I care a lot about my health, and I do eat processed foods. And so, what are we to do? Should we aspire not to eat them at all? Should we eat them but feel really guilty about it? Or should we just decide not to care and eat them with abandon? Right? None of these are really good options. What we should do with processed foods is eat them with intention, eat them with awareness, and use them to support your goals and to benefit you. And yes, processed foods can do all of those things. And I'm going to teach you how to do that in this video. So let's jump in. So here's the challenge with highly processed foods. When they process a food, a lot of the time they will strip out really beneficial nutrients like fiber, like the whole grain, right? Like vitamins and minerals will leave through the process of processing the food. And then they will add other ingredients in to make it more shelf stable, right? They're adding in salt, they're adding in sugar, they're adding in extra oils, they're adding in artificial ingredients, right? And all those add up to where you have a food that's not working as hard for your body. It has less of the really good stuff and more of the stuff we don't need as much of. And that food is just not able to support you the way a whole food with all of those nutrients would. It can't support your health, right, at that same level. An interesting thing about highly processed foods is that they tend to be less satiating. That means they don't trigger fullness as well as other foods, which means, and some studies have shown that people in a highly processed diet, highly processed foods, can eat as much as 500 calories more per day, which will add up quickly and leave you feeling very sluggish, feeling very heavy, right? You will feel that drag in your system. And so it's not working as hard for you. It's adding extra stuff that you don't need. It's going to leave you feeling sluggish. And one of the things that's interesting, just kind of in a moment by moment, is that because they're more processed, they will metabolize faster, which then will leave you feeling hungrier sooner, right? You're going to metabolize it, send all those nutrients to their storage place, and then you're going to feel hungry and want to eat sooner, right? Which probably adds to eating more calories. So all in all, we know that a diet that's based in highly processed foods as a high percentage is not benefiting your health. Okay, so what do we do with that? How do we manage this world where there's so many processed foods around us? The reality is highly processed foods are hard to avoid. They are all around us and they're here for a reason. Think about the busy parent, right? I'm definitely in this situation where I'm trying to manage children, the demands of raising them. I'm trying to manage a career. I'm trying to manage all the demands of being in a community, being engaged in life, and life gets busy. I don't have time to cook. I cook a lot from scratch, that is true, but I can't grow my own food, right? I can't grind my own grain, right? I need processed foods just to manage the demands of life. Think about places like food deserts. So a food desert is a place where the stores closest to that community don't have fresh foods. And in fact, we were traveling several months ago and we were in a town. We went to a grocery store and it was a very large market and they had zero produce. I'd never seen anything like that before, but that is the reality, that in these food deserts, there are places, right, in these larger cities where the grocery stores closest to many families don't have the fresh food, right? And so how do people in food deserts manage, right? That is a reality. There are those on-the-go days where you just go, 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 and I can't bring perishable foods with me. I need something that is shelf-stable so I don't get over hungry, right? And I can manage my hunger. Think about social gatherings, right? Where the people, your host, is offering food that is maybe more processed than what you would normally eat. And you can't just avoid that, right? You still need to and want to engage in life. That's a really healthy way to connect with other people, is to accept and receive the food that they offer. And many times that will be processed foods, right? So it's important in social gatherings. And then there's just the reality that you probably like processed foods. I like many processed foods, right? They taste good. They're designed to be highly palatable. And so it makes sense that you like them. It's okay that you like them, but because they're so highly palatable, we do desire them. We want to eat them, right? So there's just that reality. And then in my current situation, this is a perfect example, right? So they're remodeling my upstairs and we're here in our downstairs. I'm cooking in our downstairs kitchen. We don't have a dishwasher, so I don't want to dirty a lot of dishes. I don't have all of my normal cooking supplies. I don't have all of my normal ingredients. And so I need the convenience, right, of some processed foods just to manage this time of life. So that is the reality. They're here for a reason. They serve a need, and they can be very useful in the very busy, demanding lives that we lead. So how do we then manage this environment, this food environment of highly processed foods, this life environment of the demands that we're in, so that we can kind of bring these together to our benefit and to support our health goals? Okay, I'm going to teach you some skills of how to navigate this environment. But before we do that, I want to teach you a quick principle. And so I'm going to use these marbles. Okay, so I want you to imagine that the white marbles represent whole foods, right? Minimally processed foods. If you think about your fresh produce, you think about anything that's perishable, right? Kind of the outer edges of the grocery store where you get sort of the fresh meats, the fresh produce, the fresh dairy, right? Those are going to be your lighter marbles. The darker marbles may be those highly processed foods, right? That have a lot of artificial ingredients that are very shelf stable, that are kind of in the center of the grocery store. That's generally a very rough way to kind of think about it. So imagine both of these jars have an 80-20 percentage split. Okay, so this is 80% whole foods, 20% highly processed. This is 80% highly processed, 20% whole foods. And I just want you to notice visually the difference between the two, right? So where you have most of your diet coming from highly processed foods, you can't really even tell that those white marbles are in there, right? You really can't see them. They're working for you still, but look how much they have to work against to get their benefit across to your body, right? They have to work a lot harder and maybe can't overcome the amount of effect that you're getting from the highly processed foods, okay? Versus if 80% of your diet comes from more whole foods, right, as much as possible. It doesn't mean they can still be canned, they can still be frozen, but we're looking for, as close to the original food source as possible. And then we're putting in even 20%, right? To me, look how much they blend in. That doesn't even look like 20% to me, but I promise you, I counted them all out. It's 20%, but they really are enveloped, right, in those white marbles, right? Those white marbles can work much harder for your body. They can overcome the effects of those highly processed foods. And so thinking more about the balance of your consumption versus avoidance, right, and worrying a lot about not eating any at all, that can just be really a kind of a high anxiety approach to food because they are so much around us. And so thinking about that 80-20 split and then using those processed foods to your benefit to support your health goals can really bring this into focus, bring this into a place of benefit for you. So let's talk about how to do that. Okay, I'm going to teach you how I use highly processed foods to support my life and the demands of my life and to support my health goals. And so these are the three things that I'm thinking about. One, I do use them to support my health goals. I use them to drive convenience when I need convenience. And I do use them for enjoyment. Okay, those are the three things that I'm thinking about when it comes to highly processed foods. And I'll talk through each of those things and how to think about them in a beneficial way. So first of all, I use them to support my health goals. And one of the main ways I do is in the mornings, I do a lot better if I start my day with a good source of protein. And there's some good research to indicate that if you're starting with a minimum of 30 grams of protein, 30 to 50 grams, I know it sounds like a lot, it is a lot, but there's some evidence that that might help your metabolic health. And I know it helps me to feel well as well. So one of the things I do have to use a highly processed food. And this is an example. I use a whey protein to get a protein drink in the morning that is processed, right? It comes from milk. They've processed it down to just be the whey protein. They've added some stevia to flavor it and some chocolate, right? And I use that in the mornings to give me that foundation of protein. And it really helps me feel well the rest of the day. Another thing, a lot of the days, like in the afternoons, if I'm running my children to some of their activities, right, and I need a shelf-stable snack, I'll use like some of these bars, right? This one is one of my favorites. It's got egg whites, almonds, dates, and cashews, and some chocolate. So it's a lot of whole ingredients. And so I'm definitely paying attention to the quality of how it's processed. However, sometimes the truth is the bars are more processed, but they help me to manage my hunger on the go, on the run, right, where it's shelf stable. So that's a way that I use it to support my health goals at those times where it might be harder for me to get those key nutrients in. Okay, that supports my health. And the second way that I use them is probably the way most of us use them is for convenience, right? And if you think about foods, there are many foods I would not eat as much of if I couldn't get them in some processed form. So for example, canned beans. Would not eat a lot of canned beans if I had to cook them from the dried version, right? When they process them, they do add extra salt, but guess what? I would add salt too when I cook them. So I'm not too worried about that. But they come ready. I can prepare them in like a minute in the microwave, right? And so canned beans. Another food that I really like to eat is this quinoa and brown rice mix. This for me is the easiest way for me to get like a whole grain brown rice in my diet versus cooking it takes like 40 minutes. So, it takes a long time. I don't have that much time to cook brown rice in this stage of my life. And so using processed foods, right, to get some of those foods that take longer in a quicker form can really be beneficial. One of the things that my family is using a lot right now is Kodiak cakes, which is like a pancake mix. So it's a quick and easy way to have a whole grain pancake that's high in fiber and protein in the mornings when we're on the run and we need something quick and simple. And it's going to give them a nice, nourishing base. My children will receive that nice, nourishing base for the morning. And so that's when we're using a lot. And then the reality is sometimes when I need a quick meal, I am using pasta from the jars. I'm using chicken from the cans. I don't always. A lot of the time I will also cook them from scratch, but there are absolutely days where I need the convenience of using them from the jars and from the cans, right? To just get that convenience and that speed into a very busy day. And then the third way that I use them is for enjoyment. And the reality is sometimes I really do just want a bag of chips, right, to go with my meal, right? Those potato chips are the perfect complement to the sandwich that I'm eating, right? Or whatever that looks like. And so when you are eating them to enjoy them, savor them and notice the taste and notice, right, when they are serving that eating experience and when sometimes it's more of a distraction for me as well. And so when I savor and tune in, I can tell when I'm reaching for that processed food as a distraction and when I'm really able to savor that flavor as part of the broader, bigger meal that I'm eating. Okay, so use them for help, use them for convenience, use them because you enjoy them. And so here are some key principles to use them well. First of all, when I go shopping, my shopping cart is 75% fresh food, right? Whether that's from the milk that I'm buying or the fresh meats or the eggs or the dairy, the fresh produce, right? My shopping cart is pretty full. I shop every week because I am buying a lot of highly perishable foods, right? And you do want the base of your diet to be those white marbles, right? So be thinking about when you're shopping and when you're selecting your foods, filling that cart with the fresh foods. The second thing is to read labels. And so this is a really good example, right? Knowing what they're putting in the foods. And there are times where I'm eating absolutely ingredients that I can't pronounce, which I know is one of the guidelines, right, to look for that. But as much as possible, looking for ingredients that are whole, right, that are recognizable, and knowing what they're putting in your food is really helpful. And if there are times, right, where it's something that you don't know, that's part of your blue marbles, right? It's okay. Just don't make it the base, right? Don't make it the base, make it the complement. Okay, so read the labels, know what they're putting in your food, and then make space for white marbles as much as you can. Make that your base. That is really what will make the biggest difference and the biggest impact to your health is what is the base of what you're putting into your body, and make that as many white marbles as possible. Okay, so this week, what I want you to do is I want you to look at your jar, right? Think about your jar and think about what's your split, right? Not from a place of judgment, but really just from a place of curiosity. What's your split of the white marbles versus the blue marbles? And as you think about that, how is your balance? Maybe it's 80-20, maybe it's 50-50, maybe it's 80-20 on the other side. Just notice where it is. And then from there, right, having that awareness of where we are is really important. And then once we know that, you can ask yourself, what action can I take to add more white marbles? Right? What's the simplest thing I can do this week to add more white marbles? That's the first question. The second question is, how can I be more intentional about the blue marbles that I am bringing them in? Do I really enjoy them? Right? Am I really using them for taste, or am I using them for distraction? Right? Can I be more intentional about picking those blue marbles that I really enjoy, that I really want, that are giving me that convenience that I need. And if they're not serving that benefit, maybe letting them go, right? Being more intentional about how you are using and bringing those blue marbles, those processed foods, into your diet. Let's make sure your diet, everything that you eat, is working for you, including those processed foods. They serve a role, right? We're all busy. They serve a role, so let's use them with intention. Yes, let's use them in balance so that we are able to nourish ourselves from that place of wholeness. So I would love to hear from you. What is one thing that stands out to you from this video? Maybe one way that you want to bring more white marbles into your diet, more of those whole foods, or maybe a shift, right, that you have considered through this video around highly processed foods and how you want to use them with intention to support your goals. So please comment below. Don't forget to click subscribe for more videos on health and well-being from that place of center, that place of wisdom, and that place of connection to your body. And if you want more information on the work that I do as a coach, you can go to nourishwhoyouare.com. There will be a link in the video description as well. And you can go just learn more about the work that I do. You can sign up for a free coaching session as well. So please feel free to do that. And I'll see you in the next video.